Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you, and we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Today we have an interview style episode, so in just a moment I will tell you all about our guest, Gay. And before I do, I thought I'd just put a caveat out there because you might notice there's not quite as much pep in my step or energy in my voice. And it is because for the last day and a half, I have had a pretty awful stomach bug. It's one of those things where you're like, wow, I forgot what it's like to have this happening in my body. Anywho, I thought I'd just put a little real life. This is what's happening over here. It's not quite funny yet, but maybe it will be soon. Okay, so let's talk about Gay. This is much better than talking about my stomach flu. Gay is somebody who I truly admire and really am inspired by, and not in the typical way that, we use that word in the special needs mom world. But Gay is somebody that has done some things in terms of the way that she supports her daughter that really push me past where I've stopped. And you're going to hear this in when she talks. We explore all about it. So Gay is somebody who has been advocating in the rare disease community for over 25 years. She's an advocate of genetic testing, shared data, and patients leveraging their data. She's become an expert of private insurance and social services through the state and federal policy for those affected by various disabilities. Additionally, she has co-founded ADCY5.org, and it's a foundation for the rare ADCY5 movement disorder syndrome that her daughter has. And currently, since her daughter is up and out of the house, she is the director of patient advocacy and engagement at a gene therapy company called Neurogene. This is where she gets to apply her rare disease personal experience to help families better understand the role that foundations can play in the drug development life cycle. And she mentions it in the episode, but I want to make it abundantly clear that she is here as a representative of herself and her family and being a mom, and not in any way affiliated to her role at Neurogene. Gay, welcome to the show. You are somebody that I had the luxury of meeting in person for the first time and then developing a relationship with, which is kind of rare these days. And so thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest of the Special Needs Mom podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Kara. I really appreciate you inviting me today.
So let's give the people a little bit of picture. So we were at this conference in the hall. I see this lady sitting down with one of my other friends. I'm like, oh, who do we have here? And at the time, I didn't realize how big of a deal you were. And when I say that, what I mean is that you are somebody who has accomplished so many things in so many different areas. But the part I really want to focus on today is who you have become as a mom, to have created what you've created for yourself and the experience of having Lily. And so what do you remember from that first meeting over there in the Global Genes Conference?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's a huge compliment coming from someone like you. I think a lot of what you're thinking about is probably coming from the years that I have been in this rare disease world. But I remember meeting you at the Global Genes Conference and thinking it is so nice to see other moms who are taking something that is scary and unknown to all of us when we get into it and doing something really positive, not only to help yourself, but you're helping so many other moms too.
Well said. I think that's the gift of this podcast is I get to meet so many moms that are doing that, each bringing their own unique gifts to how they basically serve in this community. And like you said, it helps us, I think, as much as it helps others around us. And I think that's a beautiful place to be, knowing that you're contributing with really strong purpose in this world, even when maybe it wouldn't have been the purpose that we would have chosen. So the reason I wanted to have you on this podcast this month, is really to focus around leadership. And you are somebody that, as I've gotten to know you and really understand what you've created and just the different pieces along the way, I think it's important to say you've been a mom of a child for 25 years. So there's some years there that you've logged. But beyond that, I think that it's very unique to see somebody that's created the level of support that you have for yourself and for Lily. And honestly, for me, it's been something that it's really expanded my belief of what is possible for myself and for my son. And I don't see that often. I can't say that there's that many people that I look at and think, wow, and really kind of caused me to question certain ways that I have been being and certain assumptions I have made. And so I really, really appreciate that about you. And I know you hold a couple different roles now where you're at, right? So you're still mother and you have some other roles of how you contribute. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do during the day these days.
Well, I want to point out that I am here today as a mom, as you've requested, and co-founder of ADCY5.org. I do have a role at Neurogene where I'm director of patient advocacy and engagement, but today I'm here as a mom. And I think, Kara, what I do a lot now, I'm almost like the last generation of moms. You and some others that I know are really the next generation. You're the ones who are coming behind me in years, not necessarily in experience, because I feel like a lot of moms who were behind me in years have so many more resources than I had. But when I meet a mom and I hear how old their child is that's having challenges, I immediately remember myself at that point. And I remember thinking, when I met you, like how old Lily was then too, and what she was going through and what challenges I was having as a mom, through schools or having supports for her. And What I really find strength in as a mom today is looking back and seeing, one, what was helping me then, but also what was missing. And
Mm.
is there something that I've learned now that perhaps I can fill that need? So that's what brings the strength into my life and makes it purposeful. Anytime, I've said this many times, but anytime I can abbreviate the challenges that moms and parents have going through this process, it makes me feel better. It's like, that's why I went through this. That's why I had the challenge when I was going through it, so I can make it easier for you.
I totally agree. I think there's all these like little things that I've learned along the way. It's like I'm shouting them to everybody, like, hey, did you know that even if your child is not walking yet, like as a young child, you can get a disability placard and you should. Like, even if your child's in a stroller, you should get one. Even if your child doesn't actually have ambulatory needs, you should get one. And I learned that from my pediatrician. I would have never known that. And I've told a couple moms, and their jaws just dropped because they're like, I would have never thought about that. But think about how many doctor's appointments that you go to and how helpful that would be. So anyhow, I totally agree. And now I drop my little negative experience in there too.
I remember back to the parking. So I remember when I was at an appointment and they said, you really come here a lot. Did you know that you can go to this is actually the person in the parking garage telling me, did you know that you can go to the office and you can buy a packet of parking tickets and pay a lower price for parking? And I remember going to the office to purchase like my packet of parking at the hospital. And I remember thinking, this is the saddest thing ever, that I have the benefit of coming here so often that I can actually buy en masse my parking passes. But
Oh,
yes,
right.
you learn things like that are really kind of not things you would obviously think about having, especially for a child, but are things that are, they're tips to pass on to their moms.
Well, I can't help but say it. One, don't even get me started on how mad I get about having to pay for parking at hospitals and doctor's appointments. I won't even go there. I think everyone knows where I would go.
Yeah, me
But
too.
secondly, the disability placard gets you free parking. And that is my favorite part about it. Well, there's many favorites. However, you can tell it really makes me happy to get $4 off every time I have to go to that thinking hospital.
Right. And it's not infrequent.
No, I remember having to buy the month-long pass back before I do this. Well, anyhow, what we know about you is you've gone to the doctors or you've gone to many appointments, but we don't know a lot yet about the picture of you being Lily's mom. And so I'd love to give the listeners a little bit of a picture of what kinds of needs you supported for Lily, and obviously respecting her privacy as much as you would discern, and really just understanding of the load that you were carrying, how it was in the beginning, kind of as you got your rhythm, and how it is now. So I'd love for you to kind of go back and just describe a little bit of you as a mom of somebody with Lily's syndrome.
Lily has a disability called ADCY5 related dyskinesia. ADCY5 is the name of the gene, and dyskinesia is a movement disorder. When she was a baby, she was born a healthy baby, and we brought her home and noticed things like she was very sensitive to heat and other things that didn't really add up, like me drinking milk, and she was sensitive to that as I was nursing her. And as time went on and she got older, she developed things that looked more like twitches or movements. And she was probably only 1 year old. And that's when we really started going to multiple doctors' office, switching pediatricians because we weren't getting any testing. And at that time in my life as a mom, I had left my corporate job to start my own business so I could have a home-based business and be around my children.
Mm-hmm.
We had planned to have 2 or 3 children. And it was, a time where I was a huge planner. I knew what I was going to major in before I went to college. And I did end up majoring in that. I knew what kind of job I wanted to get, and I got it. I started my own business before I got pregnant so that I could have it underway. And all of that was, completely rolled out the way I had envisioned until Lily started having trouble. And then, you just kind of have to step back and say, wait, what's happening? This is not what I had planned.
This is not the plan.
And
Yes.
as I had watched, and I'm in a play group and all the other kids are doing different things than Lily is, and they're doing, trips to the museums and things like that. And I'm trying to find the pediatrician who will listen to me. And it was years of that. And we didn't actually have a doctor say, maybe something's wrong until she was, over 2 years old. And so that was a lot of months. And I remember thinking, what if something's really wrong and something is it's getting worse? And how do I know what this is? And I really felt very alone. This is back in the day before the internet. So I didn't really have anywhere to go and read and understand other than my pediatrician's office. So that was a really difficult time. And I think until I connected to physical therapists and, the case manager through the county and other people who could at least acknowledge the fact that something wasn't right, even though we were going through these tests and everything was coming back normal, having the validation that something is there. And I think you can equate it today to you have symptoms for your child, but you don't have the genetic diagnosis, right? You still feel like something's wrong, but you don't really know what it is. So we were going through all these tests. And because Lily was developing normal physically, not in her actions, but in her body was developing typically, it was very difficult for us to get the attention that we needed to get her the tests. Because what would happen is we would do some very basic tests and everything would come out normal. And then we would just have to wait like another 6 months. And, that's a long time to wait. And I remember saying to one of the, when I finally got to a geneticist saying, I'm really glad there's not a tumor growing in her because nobody's doing anything. Like, I don't have an MRI. I don't have x-rays. I don't know what's happening inside of her. So even though you look at her and she appears to be a healthy, typically formed body, something wasn't right. And even taking videos, like I remember she wasn't having movements enough that I would have the movie camera there because I didn't, we didn't have cell phones like we do today. So I think when I think back at that time, it was just a very alone time. That's probably the first moment when I look back at that I saw my world really dwindling down. I was putting more time into trying to figure out what was wrong. And I was spending less time with people and friends because I was scared, and I didn't know what was wrong. And I didn't have anybody to reach out to.
Yeah. Gosh, I can totally just picture like how the world's getting smaller, especially without the resources that we do have now in terms of being able to be digitally connected to people. So then as it progresses, so then you eventually do understand a little bit more about her syndrome. Give us a little picture about what her disabilities, how they impact her life.
So we didn't know really what was the cause of all of this until she was 15 years old.
15. Okay.
So we spent many
years
going all over the country, speaking to people from every institution you can think of. And this will summarize it for you. I was referred to someone as, I always was, I would be referred to other people. And this doctor said to me after I had mailed him the contents of a 3-ring binder that was, I think, 2 inches or 3 inches, the binder. And I had mailed him the whole thing. And the first thing he said to me when we got on the phone, and this was probably 2008 or 9. So at this point, she was in her teens. And he said to me, I cannot believe how many people you have seen. And then he said, every single person that I would think to send you to, you've already seen them. And I just remember I was sitting in a parking lot. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember sitting there and looking out my windshield and thinking, this is just never ending. And at that time, her movements had progressed. And much like a seizure, it's like a grand mal seizure that is, most people are, not aware. Lily's awake and aware when this happens to her. And it can happen a typical time before she was able to get the treatment she has now was 8 to 10 times a night. And she would wake up in pain screaming every single night.
Wow.
And the worst was every 5 minutes, and she would have maybe seconds in between one episode to the next. So that time between her being 1 to 15, as it progressed, as she got older and her body got bigger, was extremely debilitating to her and obviously stressful for my husband and me because, one, we were exhausted. And two, we just didn't have any more places to go. We were at our end.
And watching your child in pain, literally having to witness something
Yes.
that is not okay. One of my clients came up with this terminology, and I love it, even though it's pretty heartbreaking, is called the forced witness position. And so it's watching and witnessing this thing that, as your mother's heart knows, is absolutely excruciating, but having no other option. And so we won't necessarily go down that road today, but I just want to mention that because I think so many of us moms are watching and witnessing and participating in these moments. And I think it's worth addressing and giving some language to.
I would agree. That one of the things about this movement disorder is the body actually goes through the same cycle of movement when she would be having a different crisis, we call them. So she would have a night where her body would actually cycle through the same movement. So I would know, as this was lasting 5 minutes, it was like watching a bad movie over and over again, because her body would go through the same movements over and over again. And yeah, it was very difficult. The families who are newly diagnosed, I'm so grateful that we have options now to help families. And I spend a lot of time talking to them about it and helping them and getting them to a clinician who can help them with the treatment, get them options, and talk to them about what they could possibly do to help their child or adult, because we have a lot of adults in our community as well.
And so with this movement disorder, it lends her at certain times in her life 100% physically relying on other people because she's not able to always control her physicality. Is that correct?
Yes. And I would say that is the thing that makes her most angry. That's the thing that she voices to me as a mom, that she wants to have independence more than anything in the whole world. That is what she would like. And that's what she's getting. And what I try to say as a mom to her, and what I do say to her, is everyone has and needs supports in their life. I need supports in my life. And I really think that it's healthy for me to convey to her, as my daughter, that it's okay to have supports and help in your life. And, I went through health issues. I had breast cancer, and I couldn't have gone through that myself. I had to have my support system of my doctors and the people who helped me afterwards, and my friends and my family, and the people who were there. And I think that anyone who has any kind of disability or any kind of illness, or even if you don't, I think it's so important to have that circle around you of people who are supporting you, whatever your goals are. It's just different. So I think, normalizing isn't the right word, but I think letting my daughter know is, I think, a support for her to know that it's okay to have other people supporting you in your life, no matter what it is.
Yeah, like the destigmatization and also the acceptance that it's not a weakness, or doesn't mean anything about you, that you need to have these extra supports. Well, I'm glad you mentioned your breast cancer because it's something I wanted to incorporate into the story. How old was Lily when you got diagnosed with breast cancer?
She was in 7th grade, and that was the biggest concern in my brain over the cancer was Lily.
Yeah. And so I know what you have now. We'll just kind of give a teaser that Lily is living, we would call 100% independently of you, right? So that doesn't mean that she doesn't have support. Clearly she does, but she lives her life independently. And I just think this is the part where I'm like, wow, this is something to look at. So we'll go there, a little teaser for the future. But I want to go back to this time in your life when you are a mom, that my guess is, and you can tell me if this is true, that was your daughter was grossly dependent on you, as in if you get taken out, she gets taken out too, in terms of the level of support. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the reason why I know this from when talking to you before. My guess is that this was the big wake up call for you, that, oh, this doesn't work, because if I go, she goes, and I'm not willing to have her go, nor yourself, but you had less choice in that matter. So I'd love for you to paint a little picture of the before way that you approached having support for Lily versus the after breast cancer?
Yeah, that was an interesting day.
Oh man.
So I remember it very well. I went to get my mammogram, which I had thrown away my prescription, and I was too busy. I
Yeah,
was
you
on my
were.
way on vacation. And I threw away the prescription for my mammogram, and as I was throwing out my garbage for the week, I saw it because it was bright orange, and I looked at it and I thought, I should probably go, and so I did. And of course, this gives you an image of what my life was like. That morning, again, I was running my own business so that I could be home with Lily. And I put on my yoga clothes and I ran down to get my mammogram. And I remember, sitting there on the table afterwards because she wanted to do an ultrasound after the mammogram. And I remember thinking, I do not have time for this because my yoga starts at 10. And I need to get out of here. And I remember lying there, and there was a curtain pulled between myself on the table and the door. And the door opened, and two sets of feet walked in. And I thought, this is not good. This is a bad sign.
Oh, gives me the chills.
And so they explained to me that they wanted to do a biopsy, and they wanted me to do it then. They did not want me to leave. And I remember thinking, this is really inconvenient. And I was annoyed by this inconvenience, which, looking back, that was just like a teeny piece of it. But,
yeah,
sitting in the waiting room, waiting for a biopsy, I must have had I don't know what my expression must have been on my face, but the woman whose name is Judy, who I still keep in touch with, walked out from behind the counter, and she came and sat next to me. And I know now that she knew then that I had breast cancer. And she sat next to me and she said, how you doing? Everything. She said, I said, not good. Like I know no one has time for this, but I really don't have time for this. And not only do I not have time for this, and I didn't mean the biopsy, I meant breast cancer. But I said, I don't have time for this because I already have a full file drawer in my office for my daughter. And I do not have time to manage something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, you do have the ability to manage something like this. You don't know what you're dealing with yet, but you do have the ability. And you will. And there are lots of people to help when something like this happens. She definitely didn't tell me that I had it, but right then, she was part of my support system. So anyway, long story short, I had the biopsy and I waited a week, and I was on my vacation, and they called me and I remember answering on the phone because I knew who it was. I just answered and I said, so what does it say? And my doctor said, I'm sorry, honey, it's not good. So I remember, calling my daughter's aide at school, and, everything was around Lily. Like those were the people I called first. So, time after time, I heard like, we're here for you. We're going to help you. We're going to get you through this. And I did have to restructure my life. I mean, one of the things that I've been heard saying is, if you don't make time for yourself, then illness will make time for you. And you have to, you're forced to. And that's what happened to me. I did not have support in my home to help me. My husband was supporting our family financially, and he helped me during the night when Lily would be up all night. We definitely took shifts and did that. But I was the one that would get up in the morning, and I would cook her breakfast and her lunch, and I would pack her lunch. And, she's on a special diet, so everything had to be made before school. I would take her to school. I would pick her up from school. I would take her to therapies. I was doing the whole deal and lifting her a lot. And I love and loved that. Even that time, I loved that time being with my daughter, and that's what I wanted to do. And she has made me who I am today. I mean, anything that I am today, I credit to her, because people say, oh, you're so strong. And I think, well, Lily made me strong. And even through my surgeries and everything, she would say to me, okay, mom, because she gets IVs all the time. And she said to me, okay, mom, here's the deal. Don't ever let them get an IV in the crook of your or in your hand. Don't ever do it. It kills. Don't do it. You want it in the crook of your elbow. And I remember going to one of my surgeries, and I explained to the anesthesiologist where I wanted the IV placed. And he said, no, we can't do that because we need to move you around, and, we have to sit you up, and there's all these things that we have to do, and we just can't have the IV there. So we put it in my hand, and it ended up not working.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to move it down my arm into the crook of my elbow. And I remember coming home and telling Lily that, and she's like, "Oh, I could have told him that." Like
That's hilarious.
I know, it was really funny.
Sassy.
But she's great about advocating for herself. That was one of the things that I did with her as a mom, is whatever she did have control over, like you talk about her needing support for things, but I have tried to instill in her that whatever she does have control over, like, give her that control. Don't have someone rush into the room and start an IV in their arm without talking about it and saying, okay, can we just take a breather? Like, are you ready for this? Because imagine if someone did that to you.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that were done to me during that experience of breast cancer that I understood so much better what it was like to be a patient.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. I took my daughter to a series of doctor's appointments to have some stuff checked out. And I was so thankful that I had the knowledge that I could, one, prepare her for it by watching videos after videos after videos, because I knew she was going to be quite unpleased and scared about these appointments, and that I could support her at this high level that I wouldn't even have known existed had we not been through everything with Levi. And I know the people that we know now. So yes, I think there's these unintended benefits of the life that we live,
Right.
which we have to enjoy as benefits. So continue on. So you have this picture now where Lily was very dependent on you. You did not have supports in place. You have breast cancer. So you literally are fighting for your life now. Tell us what unfolded next, and how did that change your relationship to having additional support for Lily?
Well, so first I did not change right away at all. I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to get my lumpectomy, and it's going to be, in and out, and I'm going to come home the same day. And, we're just going to kind of get through this. And my mom came and stayed with me, and she helped me. And then I had Lily's aide from school come, and she would get Lily ready in the morning for school, and she would take her to school. And then I always made sure that I was up and dressed, and, I could kind of put on the mom face when Lily got home. Boy, wasn't I shocked when my test results came back and they didn't get all the cancer and I had to have more surgeries. And I thought, this is not going as planned.
Yeah.
And so, I was reminded that 30% of people, they don't get all the margins. And, gee, your tumor was twice as big as we thought. And, I went from stage 1 to stage 2, and that's a pretty scary thing. And it just kind of, it reminds you, wow, you're not in control, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are not in
Yes.
control of this. And I was used to, in my life, managing things, and even managing Lily's undiagnosed and misdiagnosed life. It was about me now. And it's the experience is much different. Being a mom to Lily, I am very cautious about everything that happens to her and is done to her in procedures. And I ask a million questions. And I think the difference is when I was lying in that MRI, the first time I'd ever had an IV in my life, because I went to a midwife and have refused to have IVs when I was giving birth. I remember lying face down in an MRI machine with an IV in my arm, and they were pumping something in me. And I thought to myself, it was really the first time that I had to sit still. Right. I used to move around a lot. I mean, Lily says to me today when she comes home, she's like, Mom, could you just sit down? But anyway, I was lying there, and I remember thinking, I don't know what they're looking for right now or what they're doing. If this were Lily, I would know what kind of machine this is, how long she was going to be in here, what the test was for, what test does this lead to, what are they pumping in my body? And I remember thinking, I'm such a bad patient and advocate for myself, even though
You
I
had that
advocate.
thought? You remember thinking that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yes. Very consciously lying in that machine. Yes. I hadn't asked any questions. Even when the cancer was more extensive than they thought. And I had to go back. And I remember my husband going with me, and he kept saying, look at the MRI they're showing us. It, was on this huge screen, and I could not even look at it because I just couldn't. It was almost like there just wasn't enough room in my brain for it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted someone to tell me what to do. And there are options when you have cancer. And I didn't want options. I just wanted someone to tell me what to do so I could get to the finish line and go back to where I was. I had a double mastectomy. And when I had that, I had to, sign all these forms before you go into surgery. And I said to my surgeon when she handed me this like booklet to sign, I had to sign every page. And I said, do I really have to read this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just was petrified to read what they were going to do to me. And I remember saying to her, all I want to know is what I will have to know when I'm awake. I don't really want to know what you're going to do to me when I'm asleep. Like, I want my husband to know and understand that. And I definitely, I want someone to know what's going to happen to me, but I could not digest it. It was too much for me to swallow. It was just way too much for me to understand. And I think part of that was, as a mom, I could not even absorb the fact that I might not be here for Lily.
Yeah. I know now you have a very different relationship to having support for Lily and you not being the one. So what and when did that shift for you in terms of recognizing that you not only don't have to be the only person that can really make sure that her life goes as you want it to, but that you shouldn't be that only person?
Well, I was really forced to look at life without me and what would happen to Lily, right? So she was only in 7th grade. And we had a will, but it probably wasn't as updated as it should be. We had talked about how life would be if one of us was not alive, but we did not really have a set plan. And I became very focused on what that plan would be and how everything would be structured if I were not here. And really, that started my thought because of the cancer. But as I started thinking about it, I thought, even if I didn't have cancer, this is a really important thought and exercise to take to the end, because there will be a day Lily's disease does not shorten her life expectancy. So there very possibly is a day that Lily will be here and I will not. And I did find as a mom that it actually gave Lily strength, knowing that I could plan a system where she could be independent without me. And I think that it gives her peace. You'd have to ask her directly, but I think that it gives her strength knowing that she has people in her phone that she would call if she needed help and she couldn't call me or she couldn't call my husband. And I think that empowers a child, especially a child that could feel so uncontrol of, have so much uncontrol of their body and their life. So what I did was, my husband and I did set our plan. And it was really overwhelming. If you think about, well, gosh, who do I call on to take care of my child that needs so much support? And who do I write down on that document? We have a special needs trust, which takes care of all of the things that we have that Lily would inherit, so that it's done in a way that doesn't affect her resources, which I encourage families to get in touch with an attorney that specializes in special needs trusts. And so we laid that all out and we were encouraged. I think a good piece of advice that I got from an attorney was, because it was so overwhelming to me, they said, think of Lily's life today, because this document can be changed. So if you were to not be here today, who are the people who are supporting Lily? And at that time, I thought, well, her best friend, right? So we actually had at that time set up so that circle of Lily's life would be the one supporting her. And then as she got older and went away to school, we changed it so that her being away at college could be supported with the people who were supporting her that time. And then when she moved into an apartment where she wanted to live, she lives about an hour and a half away from us. Now it's set up with Lily much more in the conversation of who do you feel comfortable with? And she actually calls it her totem pole. And she talks a lot about who's at the top of the totem pole and who's at the bottom and who those people are. And every person on the totem pole is very important. But her phone is full of people who are my friends that I depend on, that she knows she can call. It has our financial advisor, it has our attorney, it has the person in charge of our special needs trust. It has anybody who helps us. She knows that she can get in touch with them. And she knows those people. She's met them. I think it all just gives her control of her life, and it gives her the power to know that she's safe. And as a mom, my job is to make sure that she feels safe.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, like starting to paint this picture. And so I want to further develop the visual for our listeners of the level of support that you and Lily and your husband have generated, because I think it's really unique. I think it blew my mind because I didn't even know it was possible to do what you have done as a family. And so paint, if you will, for us the level of support and also what you and of course Lily has accomplished in terms of her independence.
Well, it was gradual. And one of the things with the cancer diagnosis that happened was I did have someone start coming into my home to help her with daily living tasks like bathing and helping me a little bit more with the special diet and cooking. And that was because, my doctors insisted on it and said, you have to, one of the questions they always ask you when you're diagnosed is, where does your stress come from? And they're like, you need to reduce the stress in your home. And I said, well, that's really great. Why don't you come stay at my home for a little while and see what that's like? So I started having someone more often, to come and help us. And then when Lily decided that she wanted to go to college, and she's cognitively typical, but physically she's disabled. So she depends on a wheelchair, and she has an infusion every month, and she takes medication 4 times a day, and she has a special diet. And at that time, she needed help with every single thing. So someone was there at college with her 24 hours a day. And now she didn't get the treatment that she has now until she was out of college. And the treatment she has now actually stops the movements. And so she sleeps all night, and it was better. So let me just give you a time frame. So when she was in high school, she got diagnosed at 15. We started certain treatments that could alleviate some of the movements, but there was certainly no planned out treatment. And because she was the first one in the world diagnosed with the full body presentation, there was one other family that had like a facial twitch, but Lily had the full body presentation. There was really nothing to look at. We didn't have a guide to go by. So when she decided that she wanted to go to college, she still did have these movements, and we did need to set up someone to be with her all the time. And so someone was with her. She had, like a double at school instead of a single, because she was coming with 2 wheelchairs and a walker, and there was a lot of extra stuff, and she was still getting her infusion. She would get it in her dorm room, which meant that a nurse was there for 2 days during the month. We had the sports support person there with her down the hall, and they were in a room where they would, I just said to them, you can do whatever you want. You can read a book, you can do whatever you want. And Lily had a button that she would push when she needed help. They knew her schedule. They would help her get to class. She usually had them sit in the hallway after they got her laptop situated, and she would take her class. And, that's how she got through college, with support like that. But she had someone with her all the time. And even coming home, the way that I thought about it, and this is probably an important thing to bring up, is the whole time Lily was growing up, if there were supports offered to me, whether it was by the school or the county, for example, if your child is physically disabled, the school district needs to come and pick up your child on a school bus and take them to school. And I never did that, because I would always look at it like, if Lily were a typical child with typical abilities, I would be taking her to school. That's why I had my own business, so I could be at home and I could take my child to school and pick her up and take her to Girl Scouts or whatever she was doing. So I didn't do certain things like that. But when she went to college and she needed to come home or go back to school, I wanted her to be able to do that as independently as possible. I wouldn't normally be driving an hour and a half or 2 hours to go pick her up at college. So we figured out how she would take the train. And she would take the train home with her helper. And then her helper, I would meet her at the train station, as I would if she were a typical college student. And then I would drive her home from the train station, and the helper would get back on the next train and take it back up to LA. So now when Lily comes home, Lily has a car that has a ramp for her chair, and the helper will drive her home just as Lily would drive herself home if she could drive. And they leave our house in an Uber and they go to the train station and they take the train back up to where Lily lives. So she can come home and visit whenever she wants. And I love when she comes to visit. She can go wherever she wants because she has that support. They take her where she wants to go.
And this is the picture that is just in such an amazing way blows my mind of what is possible. Because when I look at the needs that my son has, I can't even imagine him being able to accomplish some of the things that Lily has. And he's intellectually typical as well. And so I think this picture for me just blows my mind, but it also confronts me with being a mom who demands that this level of support is possible, but also is willing to receive it. And so this is actually the aspect of you that I really want to acknowledge. There's something distinctly different when I speak to you about this on, we've gone to do a retreat together. So I've gotten to be around you enough to hear you speak about these things. And you're so clear and about what is right in terms of what's available based on the different programs that exist in this world, and your willingness to receive it and the deservedness of our children and our families to receive the support. And it's a lot of support. And so I know with these kind of things, there can be narratives of like, it's too much, or I'm asking too much, or gosh, even to go to the place where I think I'm going to say it because it comes up for me as like, oh gosh, a burden to society, which I know is absolutely not true. However, there's still this, I guess, this little hint of what if I'm asking too much. And so I'm really curious is if this is something that has always been really easy for you, or if you have had to grow into asking for the level of support to be able to have what you have now in a way that is just so clear and flat and like there's no story about it. It's just like, this is what Lily needs to live, a productive and satisfying life. So this is what Willie will receive.
It's always been like that.
It's always been like that for you.
Always been like that. So when Lily was a baby and she needed physical therapy and they told me she would have 3 visits, that's when it started. And I remember saying, well, I don't understand how if she needs physical therapy, she only gets 3 visits. What happens after that? And the woman said, well, we'll give you 3 more. And during that time, you need to learn how to do the physical therapy and then you'll do it yourself. And I remember saying to her, but people go to school to be a physical therapist. So how am I supposed to know how to do this in 6 hours? Yeah. And won't her body change? And won't those exercises change? And then I would talk to the doctor, right? And I would say, I don't understand how I'm supposed to learn this in 6 hours. Are there printouts I should be looking at? Are there books I should be reading? And that's when it really started. I hired a physical therapist. This is before I learned a lot about being in network and out of network. I hired a woman who specialized in working with children who were adopted from Russia and needed extensive physical therapy. And I met this woman because a friend of mine had adopted a child from Russia. So I had this woman come into my home and she helped me with Lily. After 6 months, I had a ton of bills because, it takes a while for things to get billed, right? So all of a sudden you're like, wow, how do people sustain this for so long? And I called my insurance company and they said, well, it was out of network. And so I had talked to my doctor and beforehand, before the 6 months, and I had said, what if I feel that she needs more physical therapy? Where should I go if you feel like I'm going to the wrong person? And they approved that person, but the insurance wouldn't cover it. And so I appealed it. To me, it was very black and white. And then I appealed the next step and I appealed the next step. And then it was, oh, so now the next step, you come down to our big fancy office and you meet in front of 10 people who are your peers, and then you appeal it and you state your case of why you did this. And so I went through how I had asked the pediatrician who referred me to the neurologist who referred me to a physical therapist, and how I had followed the process. I had even called the insurance company. They'd given me the person to go to, and this was the bill. And I remember saying to them, I have purchased insurance for decades in my life, and now I've had a baby and the baby is ill and needs physical therapy. I buy insurance betting that I will get sick or my child will get sick. You sell me the insurance betting that I won't use the insurance. I need the insurance. She needs this care. So insurance is a bet, right? So I'm betting one way, they're betting the other way. They're going to lose on some people. And I looked at all of them and I said, you're losing on us.
I love that. Well,
And
okay.
I walked out of that meeting with a check for the full amount because the vote was that I should be reimbursed. And that's really when it started. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's really important that I'm not fighting for me. I'm not fighting for things that I get. I'm fighting for Lily to have an independent life that she deserves. Why does she not deserve it? She deserves to be as independent as possible. And she will be a better contributor to our society and be able to give back if she has the services to become as independent as possible. So that's the goal.
And this is the spirit that I want the listeners to experience that you have. And whether it was something that was you already had or you developed, this is who you are now. And I think this is the belief that you bring into all the work that you do for yourself and for Lily and for the, the patients that you currently work with inside of your day job. I want to also assert that, like, my guess is you probably frustrate a lot of people because you're not willing just to do what they want you to do, which was easy for them. And I love this, your willingness to disrupt and to ask the next question. And so is that true that perhaps some people don't appreciate that about you as much as I do?
So when I moved from Ohio to California, my girlfriends one day at school during drop off, they're like, this one who's so funny, she said, have you heard there's a huge party happening? And I said, what are you talking about? Because I was moving. I thought maybe they were having a party for me. I was like, what are they talking about? And she said, oh, the whole administration is having a huge party because you are moving.
I was just going to say, I see where you're going with this. That is so great. Well, I was going to say, because not all of us are naturally like that. And I'd say I probably had this way of being in my day job when I was in my previous profession much more easier. I wasn't actually aware that I was being so quote unquote difficult, but I was so willing to stand for what I thought was right, for what I needed. So therefore, my product is I probably annoyed and pushed a lot of people more than they wanted to be pushed. It's just kind of who I am. And I also find that even though I have that ability in some areas, I do find that with other areas, school mostly, that there is a level of discomfort of pushing and asking that I get to, and I kind of stop or pause or perhaps take a more gentle approach, which is really just a camouflage way of trying not to disrupt anything. It's really my fear of rocking the boat. And I think at some level we all have this, but I see this happening for myself. Therefore, I know it's happening for other people. And so the thing I'd be curious to hear from you is that I'm sure you see this happening as well. And I would love to hear what you would say to those moms who now hear what your stand and the way that you operate and say, I want a little bit more of that. I want to step into that role of leadership that has me unwilling to stop when I get to an obstacle. So what would be the thing that you would have the moms in our community take on or try or look at as something to shift into this level of leadership?
Well, it's not as if I look at a list of things I could get for my child because she has a disability. I look at my child and what she needs. So talking about school, there's a very clear list of what Lily needed in school in order to be successful to graduate. And those are the things that I made sure that she had. Other families have other things that I wasn't considering because it wasn't necessary. To give you an example, when we never had to have legal assistance in Lily's school until she was in high school, and it was because she couldn't access classes on the second floor, like something that is a very clear law. I didn't want the school to be rebuilt. I just wanted this class to be brought down to the first floor. And I am actually really reasonable. So Lily's high school, now it's fully accessible because of a lot of work, because of our family. However, when Lily was going there, it was not accessible.
Mm-hmm.
The bathrooms were not accessible. And one of the things that I said to them was, I don't need a handicap bathroom. But if you have a handicap bathroom somewhere on campus, could Lily have access to it? And it turned out that the staff bathrooms were handicap accessible. So I just said, fine, she doesn't need to go to the bathroom on, where all the other students go. It's fine. Just let her have access to that bathroom. I never asked them to redo a bathroom, except in kindergarten, because she was tiny and she couldn't use the bathroom at school. Anyway, that was just replacing a toilet. I'm just saying that because someone could listen to this.
This is good. I think people are seeing how this works over there, and I love it. This is exactly it.
Listen to this podcast and say, "Oh, I remember when you had that toilet ripped out." But anyway,
I like that. Well, I never asked them to do this, except for that one time.
Right. So I remember this was the first time I really had brought Lily into the fact that I have to advocate so much in school, but in high school, when we were doing this and I was getting an attorney, I thought I really need to sit down with her to find out if there's something else we should be doing. And she said to me, well, Mom, I don't have access to get onto the football field. And I thought, well, okay, but why do you need access to the football field? So I wasn't willing to fight to get her access in the football field until she told me that that's where they go when there's an emergency and everyone's evacuated from the buildings. And that's where the paramedics and the ambulances all gather. And that led to the discussion of, well, where do you go if you can't get onto the football field? And she went to the exact opposite end of the city block. The high school takes up a full city block. She went to the exact opposite corner by herself with her aide, which started, that started a whole thing. But the reason I bring that up is because I wasn't willing to just write on my list, oh, Lily needs access to the football field. Lily had no intention of playing football or running track.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that the way to look at it is it's very black and white. What does your child need to do to succeed in order to get their certificate or diploma that they are working towards at that school? And then it's a matter of, is it the law that is something that should be accessible to them? And then you work with the school or the district to make sure that happens. So yeah, I have tons of people who don't like me, Kara, because I do have a clear outline of what she deserves to be successful and what should be accessible to her. And I do fight for that and I don't back down.
Yes. And this is what I love about you so much. And I really appreciate the distinction that you weren't fighting just to fight. Like it wasn't a matter of principle that you were saying she needs access to the football field. And I do see this happening in the disability world. Well, there's so much in terms of work that we still have to do as a society to acknowledge, oh, this doesn't make sense to actually not have somebody be able to, get to the place where all the other students go for safety issues. But I think sometimes we can get a little bit of a kind of looking for the problems kind of attitude, where it's like we're just kind of looking for all the things that are being done wrong, and then we can just kind of be angry about it all, which is distinctly different about than how you're looking at this. Is really just and this is the black and white, the clear and flat way that I hear you speak is like, what does she need? What is the law? that's it. Like, and let's get it.
Right. Who can help me get there?
And who
But
can
there's
help you
certain
get there?
things, Kara, like when I found out about that and I felt, this is when all the school shootings were starting. And I became really panicked about how she was evacuated. When I was in Ohio, I remember being told when this was the first time that she was in a school. And I felt like because she was there all day, I felt really out of control about how her safety would be handled. And this is, like I said, she was in kindergarten. And I remember being told if there's an emergency by law, only the chief of police can carry her out of the building. Nobody can pick her up because that's a liability.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And this is when she's using a walker, not a wheelchair. And I remember feeling so panicked. I remember her aide pulling me aside and saying to me, I need you. And I didn't know this woman very well at that time. And she said, I need you to know that I will pick Lily up and get her out of the building. And, I just remember thinking, okay, there are people who are thinking outside the box, but, even in high school, I would do things that would be a little bit different. So I would take it into my own hands a little bit. When the school shootings were happening, I took Lily's schedule and a map of the school, the high school, because it's a very large high school, and I gave it to the local fire department. And I said, I realize that you do not always have the ability to refer to something like this, but I feel like it's one thing that I could do to make myself feel better so that that my daughter is in a wheelchair and she's at the high school and this is her schedule this semester and this is where she is and here's a map of the school. You'll also hear me say when I'm speaking to parents that there's a lot, yes, that needs to happen by law, but there's a lot that doesn't happen, even though it's a law. And there are things you can do to make sure your child is safe.
Mm-hmm.
I do things like that are little, but not very little, that could somehow maybe make Lily safer.
And there's these two pieces of it that you said. It's one, there's actually the impact that it has on Lily's life, or the potential impact, we should say. But there's also what it gives you. And what I heard you say is that it's one thing that you can do that makes you feel a little bit better. It makes you feel like, well, I can't control exactly what happens, but I know I have done what I need to do. And that definitely is something that can give any of us so much peace because, ultimately we all know we can't control everything.
Right.
So, but when we know that we have done what we need to do, that is a place to really set us up to actually have peace. So thank you so much for putting that in here. And as we kind of move to wrap up our conversation, I just want to open it up. If there's anything that just through this conversation is on your mind or on your heart, is there anything that you want to say before we end this episode?
I think just to touch on what you said earlier about you can get really wrapped up in a lot of different things and feel angry about it. I would hope that families who are entering into this world will see the positive. The people who have come into my life because of Lily and Lily's challenges are so genuine, real, beautiful, loving, and necessary for me in my life. And there are so many things that I have gratitude about the people that I've met and the people who support me and the work that I do every day and things that I want to do. When I look at different goals that I write down for each year, here it is January, and I've recently done my personal and professional goals. So many of those things would not be on my list if Lily had grown up as a typical child, personally and professionally. So it's just a different way to live. It's not a better or worse way to live. And every time I do something that makes Lily's life better, more independent, safer, I'm also doing it for other families and other people in our world who might not have the time, the know-how, the savvy to pull it through themselves. So someone might say that I was very intent on changing the high school and making it handicap accessible for Lily. Well, guess what? It didn't happen when Lily was at school. And I remember the school telling me kind of well, this isn't going to happen when Lily's in school. And I thought that is completely fine because I've been able to make the arrangements for Lily to get through the school successfully. But any child coming afterwards, It's the greatest satisfaction to me to drive by that high school and to know that that school is now handicap accessible.
Okay, well, I want to put one thing in that I really heard in this last piece that I think is so like actually mind-blowing and distinct. Because as I observe you in life, you have a very empowered life. I mean, I know it's not perfect over there, yet you are, in my observation, very fulfilled and not really fighting against my life shouldn't be this way. And what you just said about it's just a different way to live. That story that you have in your life is, I think, giving you this opening to be able to have this very fulfilling, my life is different but awesome, versus the story that many of us have, it's coming up a lot in my world, is it's not supposed to be this way. And when we stay in that it's not supposed to be this way energy, it's very hard to get to this place where you are. And again, we all know it didn't come just magically. You actually had to make one step after another to get here. But I just want to point that little distinct thing out, that this life is just a different life. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Special Needs Mom podcast, for being somebody in my life. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kara. I love knowing you. I love being here, and I'm looking forward to anybody that I might meet because of this podcast.
One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.